Hey, everybody. Thank you very, very much for joining us. I have like my favorite Brit online today. Absolutely number one by far. We actually met when she was opening up Simplyvat's office in Shenzhen, China, and she did a stint in Canada as well. And I've got Alex Wyatt from Simplyvat. We're going to be talking about how sellers can expand into Europe. And it's a little bit unpleasant to talk about taxes, but Alex is going to make it as painless as possible. So Alex, introduce yourself to the Amazon sellers that are watching this, not only live now, but also we generally get about 2,000 people who watch our videos over the next week or so. So tell them who you are, tell them about Simplyvat.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, CJ, and thanks for having me. So my name's Alex Wyatt. I run the business development team here at Simplyvat. So we have offices here in the UK and in China, but I have a bit of a wonky accent because I am originally from Canada. So so I'm here today to talk to you about selling into Europe, what you need to know. VAT isn't the most fun topic, as CJ said, but I'm going to try and make it as easy as possible to get through.
All right, that's great. I didn't know you'd been a lot. I knew you in the UK, and I didn't know you're from Canada. And meeting in Shenzhen was an adventure itself, because Alex and I are both trying to organize teams in China, and we were able to sort of commiserate and joke with each other about the challenges that are faced working with the Chinese team, cultural differences, communication differences, right?
And learn a bit of Mandarin too while we were at it.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Okay, you want me to go ahead and start the slides?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, everyone who's watching, I want you to know that when I put the slides on, I can't see myself anymore, and I won't be able to see Alex. So I've asked Alex to tell me if I start like looking askew or looking like an idiot to let me know right away, okay? So I could look even worse. All right, Alex, so here we go.
Okay.
Here we go. Play from start. Okay, you tell me when you want me to change slides, and I'm going to pepper you with questions because I think sellers also need to know the nuts and bolts of just about everything.
Perfect. Well, right now, all I can see is a black slide, so I don't know if it's
no.
working, CJ.
Really? How about now?
It's still dark.
All right.
But nonetheless, I'm happy to just kind of ramble on and talk for a little bit, and then if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to message me.
I got it. Wait a second here. I'm so pissed that I can't get this up there.
Don't worry if not, because I can just talk. It might not be as interesting because it's just me talking, but.
All right, I'm really sorry. So let's start from go. I can see there's an organizational chart about Simplyvat.
Yeah, so I just wanted to start a bit about us, just so you have a bit of understanding of who we are. So we started in 2013, and our CEO, Claire Taylor, launched to help e-commerce sellers in particular understand their rules and regulations around VAT. Because as we're finding out now, a lot of people don't understand, and they're getting audits, backdated tax, that they, hundreds of thousands that they owe, and it's really quite detrimental to your business. So the usual response we've been getting is the head down in the sand. So people, they don't want to know they have VAT obligations, and they just kind of ignore that it's their responsibility. But that can only last for a short while, and especially now that the UK tax authorities are, auditing non-UK based companies, it's really, really important to make sure that they are, that you're being prepared for what's to come.
Hey, how organized is the VAT in terms of the collection process? Here in the United States, sellers they're very, very insecure, and they are rightfully insecure because you have Amazon, for example, in Washington State, they're collecting the sales tax for the sellers and they're turning it over to the state. But in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts, Amazon literally took all the names and addresses and identities of all the sellers whose products ended up in those states and gave it over to the taxing authorities. And they don't know what to do. They're fending for themselves. In every state, there's at least one sales tax return, and in many states, there's multiple. In Louisiana, there's a separate sales tax return for each of like the 64 different parishes in one state. So a lot of sellers in the US don't know what to do, and they're definitely it's like 90% of the conversation about what risks, what are the penalties, what are the liabilities. And also here in the US, it's a big problem because if one seller out of 20 is collecting sales tax, no one's going to buy from them. So what's going on with the VAT in terms of the aggressiveness of the collections?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing to note where we differ from the US is all VAT is included in the price you list on Amazon. So it's actually your responsibility as the seller to collect it. It's not added on and checkout as it is. The VAT is not added on in the checkout process as it is in the US. So it's really important to make sure, because VAT rates range from 17% to 27% across the EU. So that could be a huge bit of your margin if you're not accounting for it in your products and your product listings.
Yeah, that's a huge percent. That like out of business percent.
Oh yeah, completely. So it's really, really important. I think that's the first thing I kind of tell sellers when I speak to them is you need to make sure you're factoring that into your margins. The next thing is it depends on where you are holding your stock. So holding your stock in an EU country triggers an automatic obligation to be VAT registered in that country. So for example, if you're in the UK and using an FBA center, then you would have to have a UK VAT registration. Now, Amazon in the UK have been penalized by HMRC, the tax authorities. And so HMRC is now getting seller information, just like they are, as in Rhode Island, as you said, and you know, they're closing down accounts. And again, that's jeopardizing people's livelihoods. So it's really, really important to make sure that you are following the VAT obligations, collecting that 20% VAT, and then filing. So in the UK, for example, you can file quarterly or annually. It just depends on how you want to file.
What are the penalties to sellers if they don't do this? Like once it all catches up, like I knew prior to Brexit, it was a big issue. Like no one was really paying it, no one was really collecting it. And as it started to gear up, then the whole Brexit thing exploded. And like now, what are the penalties and how often are sellers sort of having to face this issue?
So right now, the HMRC is auditing all non-UK based businesses. So as a non-UK based business, which I'm sure many of you are, you have to be aware that they are coming for you. They have access to your sales data, and they're auditing everyone. So right now we have quite a few going through, and they're looking at sales data right from the beginning. So if you are just declaring from now until looking forward, they're actually going to have access to your Amazon sales data looking back. And in terms,
what's good and bad about, let's say, Amazon in the UK is that they don't have as tight a grasp on the market, tighter grip on the market. Like in the US, it's like 65% of all online sales are now going through Amazon, where sellers here in America, it's not the same in Europe. It's not the same. There, it's more like 50-50, right? Maybe even a little bit less, where you have Amazon has 50 and everybody else is splitting the rest. Is the same thing going on for people on like eBay and the other platforms in Europe and in the UK?
eBay for sure. They were also kind of caught in the rift with Amazon. So I know eBay is requesting all sellers to have a UK VAT registration. But as we go, you know, as the EU kind of clamp down, the tax authorities across the EU are also going with it. So right now we're seeing Germany being quite strict, followed by French. And soon, I mean, I'm sure the other ones will follow suit quite soon. It's only, you know, time will tell, especially with Amazon kind of penetrating all the markets right now. It's a lot of VAT loss for the tax authorities, and that's revenue for their business, or sorry, for their country. So I can't see why they wouldn't be cracking down on sellers.
Is the HMRC getting the information directly from the platforms?
I'm not sure the exact agreement that they have put in place, but it's either somebody, say from the UK, will trigger an audit and notify HMRC, saying, you know, these people don't have a VAT number or it doesn't match up, and HMRC will go investigate. But HMRC has also put in a whole online compliance team where they're just looking at audits, and they do have access to the Amazon seller data. So I'm sure you cannot get away with it. I'm 100% sure.
So they were hung out to dry. All right, I want to change gears. because there's so many bad questions to ask. Like, what are the penalties? How long are you going to get to pay? How are you going to pay? I like to stay positive though, okay? So let's shift gears. Let's shift gears as to how can Amazon sellers avoid problems, make more money, and also comply with the VAT.
Yeah, perfect. So the best thing I would say is start to educate yourself on the VAT. If you're operating in a new market, you have to comply with the local laws and regulations. So there's no way of really avoiding it. So the best thing to do is understand that, one, you have import VAT to pay, but if you're VAT registered, you can reclaim that on your VAT return. So that's really, really useful. If you're importing, you can reclaim the import VAT. And two, you have sales VAT, and that would be collected on each sale. But depending on which products you sell, there's different VAT rates. So in the UK, we have zero rated goods for items such as coffee, safety equipment, children's clothing. They're all zero rated. So you can actually save that 20% margin if you're selling those type of products.
So however, for a seller who might be a little bit hesitant to get in, if he can go on these products, these categories that have a zero VAT, it might be a good way to get their foot in the door and avoid this issue first.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good way, yeah, to, again, you can increase your margins through that, and you don't have to pay 20%.
Is there like it's called a hall pass, right? A hall pass. Isn't there a hall pass where you don't have to pay taxes on a certain amount? Like unless you're selling past a certain amount, you don't owe any taxes. In the US, you owe sales taxes from like the very first dollar.
So if you're holding stock, unless there's a lot of people that have said, "Oh, we have 85,000 to trade up to in the UK," and actually that's a misconception. That 85,000 pound threshold is only for UK based businesses. So if you're a non-UK based business holding stock in the UK, you need to be VAT registered right away. However, the great kind of rule I like to suggest people is called the distance selling rules. And that's where you're holding stock in the UK, you have one VAT registration in the UK, and you can actually sell across borders into Germany, France, Italy, Spain, up until set thresholds within a calendar year until you have to be VAT registered. So that's kind of a great way to kind of see where your customers are, and you can actually generate quite a bit of revenue. France, Italy, Spain, it's all 35,000 euros, and Germany is actually 100,000 euros. So you have quite a bit of buffer room to see where your customers are, test the different EU markets only by having one VAT registration in place.
You know, it's really interesting that Germany gives the longest or largest amount of money where you don't have to, pay the taxes. When people ask us where they should go next, most people lean towards going to the UK because of the English language, or US to UK, it's a bit easier. There's a huge market in Germany. The sellers that we see for non-legal suspensions, plans of action, that sort of thing, intellectual property rights issues, they're doing extremely well in Germany. It's a huge, huge market with a very affluent population.
Yeah, absolutely. Germany is growing, and it's growing way faster than the UK. There's two things that I would kind of point out to American sellers. One would be if you're kind of a smaller seller, the VAT returns are required monthly. So the cost of compliance can be a bit higher, and also the language barrier might be a bit of a deterrent. And the second thing is if you're importing into Germany straight from, say, China, right now we're finding a lot of people are getting stuck at the German customs without an EU address. So it's really important to speak to your freight forwarding agent before you enter into the EU, or before you enter into countries like Germany, to make sure that you're not getting stuck at customs.
Are you seeing the same problem with customs with goods coming in from the States?
It's the same sort of thing. It's big bulk shipments being shipped in, and they're looking for a EU-based company or an EU address for a company. I'm not a customs expert, so I'm not sure why, but it has happened for a few of our clients where they've had to reroute their shipments, go in through the UK, and then ship to Germany. And in that case, again, you can either use the Onward Supply Relief Program in the UK, or either way, you'll need VAT registrations in place there. So
I know you're not a customs person, but have you seen it that when you compare like Germany, Italy, Spain, France, is the UK easier to get American goods into, or easier to get goods in, if it's going straight from China into Europe?
I would say it's easier for a few reasons. In the UK, you don't require fiscal representation, whereas in France, Italy, Spain, you'll require somebody that's fiscally representative of you. So they're jointly and severely liable for the VAT owed, which puts an extra cost for your business. So it may be an extra little barrier to importing your goods there. Whereas if you import into the UK as a US based business, it's a lot easier to get your goods in because you can VAT register it yourself and you're responsible for yourself. So it is a lot more, simplistic to import.
All right. When it comes to the nuts and bolts of using Simply VAT, what should our sellers do if they're interested in learning more? They want to know the process about how you guys operate. How does it work? What's the nuts and bolts?
Yeah, so we've just actually launched a software called SFAT, and quite uniquely named. And so what the software does is it can pull data from platforms like Amazon, eBay, Shopify, Magento, whatever software or sales channels you're selling on. And then we gather all the sales data. We'll monitor those distance selling thresholds for you, report in all 28 EU countries. We also do Canadian filings as well, and you'll get assigned a client manager where they'll look after your VAT accounts, and you can ask all the questions, whether it be B2B, B2C, because the VAT rates and rules vary between the two.
Once you have the return, we call them a tax return, the filings. Once you're taking care of the filings, how does the money go from the seller to the government, where it has to go?
So it's the seller's responsibility to pay the VAT. We don't actually deal with the payments. So you can either send it from the US through your bank accounts through the US. Again, there will be bank transfer fees each time you do it. So if you're filing in Germany monthly, that can add up quite quickly. Other options are to use currency companies like Payoneer, OFX, where they will hold those local accounts for you and you can pay the tax authorities directly. So it's definitely worth looking into local bank accounts for your money.
I'm glad you brought up Payoneer. We've done webinars with them, and I've become a bit friendly with the people over there. In terms of keeping the money in the local currency, where you're also going to have to pay sales taxes, you're saving the currency exchange fees twice. If you take, euros and you bring it back to dollars, and you got to go back and pay it in euros, you're paying those fees twice. So if you can leave it in a local currency, and Simply VAT can show you how to pay it through Payoneer, it's a good idea to use it. We use Payoneer with our team in China, and it just works remarkably well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've actually offered, we also take payments from Payoneer accounts. So if you are a US seller operating in the UK and you have a UK bank account or a UK Payoneer account, we can actually take, our fees into a Payoneer account as well. So again, saving you bank transfer money, bank transfer fees. So yeah.
All right. So Simply VAT can organize it. You can file the returns. You could also arrange for the sellers to make the payments, and you also can connect with Payoneer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me some more what sellers need to know.
Okay, so I've covered import VAT, sales VAT. There's one unique number called an EORI number. This is called the Economic Operator Registration Identification Number. It's a mouthful, so we call it EORI. So the EORI number is actually aligned to your VAT number, and that you have to give to your importer, whether it be your freight forwarder, your logistics company. You need to make sure it goes on your import documents. So it triggers what's called a C79 document in the UK, or a SAD document if it's going to anywhere else in Europe. And that will allow you to reclaim your import VAT on your VAT return. So without that document, you cannot reclaim the import VAT. So it's really important to make sure your EORI number is on the import documents.
And that's the same number for all across Europe, right?
Yes. So if you have a UK EORI number, it will work for across Europe. And if it's European URI number. It works for all of Europe except for the UK. The UK is a bit wonky that way, but yeah, you just have to make sure you are also VAT registered in that country where you're importing into, because otherwise you cannot reclaim. So you can only reclaim in the country where you're registered.
Are you expecting to be changes as Brexit, I guess, comes into its own?
Yeah, absolutely. So nothing's kind of set in stone as of yet for Brexit and what it means in terms of the trade, the trade legislation. But for now, it's business as usual. But what we can assume, it's going to go kind of either one of two ways. So the UK will either stay within the European Union and have access to the single market, or we're going to have a hard Brexit, as they're calling it, and that means we're going to be completely removed from the single market. And it's going to be like you're importing, say, from the USA to Europe. It's going to be the same sort of thing. You're going to have to go through a customs clearance to go from the UK into, say,
President Trump started with aluminum, and I'm not going to express my political opinions here or my feelings. We're not going to talk about Stormy Daniels, okay? We're just not going to get into that stuff here. But are you anticipating any additional problems or obstacles to sellers from the U.S. getting their products in, selling, paying their taxes as a result of what's being reported as potential, tariffs coming into place?
You know what? It's hard to predict anything right now. However, there's so many different rules in place which the EU kind of covered for the UK, and now it's going to be the UK having to put in a whole new set of rules and regulations and tariffs, and depending on which products you're bringing in, they're going to have to rearrange all of that now because they're not covered by the EU. So I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how long it's going to take to negotiate or even manage. So yeah, I can't comment on that. So we're hoping we can stay in the single union.
I can't contain myself, but was Stormy Daniels' interview, was that interview big in Europe? Did you watch the Stormy Daniels interview?
I didn't watch it myself, but I saw it post on like Facebook and Twitter. It was all over the place. And so,
does anybody in Europe care?
I don't. I think I'm just not going to comment.
All right. So I know this is a bit disjointed because we don't have your slideshow's not up. You talked about the different account numbers that we need. You're all over Europe. What else do you think the sellers need to know? Or how should they find you? How should they ask more? Anything else you want the sellers to talk about, or you want to talk about with the sellers?
Well, one main thing actually is Amazon is really pushing the pan-European program, and they've made it sound all great and lovely that you can, they offer reduced fees, you have prime access to customers, but with that pan-EU exposure, you also have a large VAT exposure. So you have to have 7 VAT registrations in place. There's over 60 VAT returns annually, EC sales lists in each country, control statements, SAFTI filing, and the list kind of goes on. So it's really important that the Pan-EU program is just a little single check mark on your Seller Central. So if you are, if you're looking into the Pan-EU, it's important to be, to be aware of your costs of compliance. But yeah, just make sure that if you are starting out in Europe, maybe look at one country using your distance selling rules to expand across the EU, and then see where your customer base is and see if it's worth expanding into those other EU countries.
And then we preach the same thing. We preach to expansion. We should absolutely expand. People are much more comfortable starting in the UK first, so I think Germany is a better market. But walk before you run. But if someone is going to jump in at both feet, should they reach out to Simply VAT first and then click the box on Amazon, or vice versa? What do you suggest?
I would suggest reaching out to us. That would be, you need to make sure you're aware of everything that's involved, especially as a non-EU business and the fiscal representation that you're going to need. And also Amazon isn't allowing people to continue selling if you do not have your VAT registrations in place. So it is important to reach out and you can contact us through setting up a Calendly call through our website. You can email here to help@simplyvat.com, or you can just email me at alex.wyatt@simplyvat.com. And
I almost put your direct email on the screen, and I restrained myself, but it's okay, I will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think there's a good opportunity here for sellers to jump in, like first register for VAT and then click the button, as other sellers then get wiped out because they're failing to do the VAT?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's even a case that, people have been trading for a while, and Amazon doesn't, or they just shut down their account without warning, because as of March 5th of this last month, Amazon required all sellers on the UK platform to have a VAT registration in place. So they're going to shut down your account either way. So it's really worth looking into the VAT obligations and what your exposure is when you're operating within Europe.
It's alex.wyatt@simplyvat?
Yes.
There we go. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, so yeah, to me, it seems like there's definitely a competitive opportunity there, because some sellers are not going to comply right away. And if you're in compliance and you're in some real hot listings, you will survive, the purge. They'll probably come back, but at least for some period of time, you'll have a real competitive advantage because you're not going to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? We're seeing that a lot with the Chinese sellers as well. As you're saying, we go to China, we kind of see how they operate. It's not the most compliant at all. But it's only, it's like I said, head down in the sand approach. It can last for a short while, but it's not going to be a long-term solution. And as we're seeing now, we have sellers contacting us daily with backdated tax orders of, between £50,000 to, up to £1 million of backdated VAT owed. And that's when HMRC or the German tax authorities have picked them out and said, this is how much you owe us and you have to pay it. So now we're going through negotiations with the tax authorities and filings. So it does become a bit more, you have extra penalties and extra, interest payments if you fail to be compliant.
Are you seeing a lot of Chinese sellers who are filing for VAT?
They're starting to. They're starting to realize that they have to comply. We see a lot of Chinese sellers going into Germany rather than the UK. I think they're seeing that there is a huge market there. But yeah, I think it's a slow and steady burn, especially with Amazon kind of cracking down on them. I can see it. It's going to happen eventually. They can't get away from it for that much longer. Okay.
Any last minute plugs? Any last minute advice? You got your email up there. Put the website, whatever you want.
Yeah, well, you can feel free to reach out to me. You can look us up on simplyvat.com. And yeah, if you have any questions, any little bits of advice, feel free to reach out. If you do get something from the tax authorities and you don't know how to handle it, reach out again. It's better to kind of understand your obligations and what's kind of involved in the auditing process before you kind of get chucked into it. So it's again, if you have any questions, we're always here to help. And that's kind of our main ethos is education. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help.
All right, cool. I'm just going to do one more thing here. People who watch this thing know that at the end of this thing, I try to talk about the Amazon events that are coming up. I want sellers to know around the world what the opportunities are. Also the charity I'm going to talk about. So if you are expanding and you're kind of hesitant to get into countries with other languages, UK is great. Also, Australia is opening up. There's a great event for Amazon sellers in Australia coming up. Retail Global in Gold Coast, Australia. I'm going to be there speaking. I'm taking my PADI certificate of scuba diving there first, making a whole trip out of it. Also, there's a fantastic event, Global Sources in Hong Kong, that's coming up in April. So, Alex, I don't know if you are, but I'm headed back to China actually tomorrow and then again in April. Looking forward to it. It's a really cool place to see if you're sourcing in China. It's a cool place to see, and you got to go and meet the people you're doing business with. Okay, the reason I put the charity on the bottom of the screen is that all of us that are doing business with or around or on Amazon, most of us also buy on Amazon. And if you're buying on Amazon, please use Amazon Smiles. It's a charitable program, and pick the Ty Lewis Campbell Foundation charity. If you buy through Amazon Smiles, it doesn't cost you or your customers any extra money, but Amazon then donates a small amount to a charity of your choice. I always pick the Ty Lewis Campbell Foundation. It was founded by a fraternity brother of mine who lost his son Ty to brain cancer, and him and his wife Cindy are just awesome people who raise money to try and find cures to pediatric cancers. And you wouldn't believe how little of the budget goes to pediatric concerns, rather than other issues. So, Miles and the Ty Lewis Campbell Foundation. Alex, thank you so much for being on.
No, thank you.
I hope to see you soon. I was supposed to see you about a week ago. We got snowed in, but whether it's in Europe or in China, I really hope to connect with you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to see you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.